Hey, what's up guys? This is Technical Tim here. Again, I want to thank everyone so much for subscribing. We're at 75 subscribers. I started this like a week and a half ago, and I didn't think I was going to get to 75 subscribers by the end of the year. I'm not even joking. I thought this was going to just be a thing, kind of me talking to a few people. But so that's really cool. I'm blown away by all the support, even if it's kind of small scale right now. I really appreciate all the support, and it means a lot. So if you haven't subscribed, I'd really appreciate it if you did subscribe. And if you enjoy the content of this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, but only if I earned it. And I'm not joking. I really want to make sure every video is of high quality for you all. I'm going to do another little kind of a preview for UFC 236. I already did one on Eric Anders and Khalil Roundtree, and in that one I gave away a free pick of Eric Anders, and I also gave a preview on Israel Adesanya and Kelvin Gastelum, and I talked about how you probably shouldn't play Kelvin in that fight. But now I'm going to be talking, and I know this isn't a very anticipated fight, but I think there is a very important betting principle in this fight, and that's why I chose this fight. Brandon Davis and Randy Costa. So Brandon Davis, he's kind of just like a fringe level UFC talent, but UFC caliber, definitely. But kind of lower end prelim guy. Not a bad fighter, freestyle fighter. He kind of is just, kind of does a little bit of everything. He doesn't particularly excel anywhere, but he's not particularly deficient anywhere either. And then Randy Costa, he's a UFC newcomer, and he's like 4-0, 5-0, and I taped him a little bit, and he's fought guys who just are not good, and he's going to be making his UFC debut. So, one second. Sorry. And he's going to be making his UFC debut, and I kind of I'm picking this fight as one to preview, to kind of just talk about how to deal with debutants in the UFC. Got people who are making their debut in the UFC. So I think this is a stay away fight. If you were to bet, I would probably side with Brandon Davis, simply because, but he's like minus 165, so I'm not interested in that either. I'm not playing this fight. But usually the proven UFC competitor versus somebody who's just been kind of just beating up people with 0-0 records, statistically, I would say, I don't know if this is proven, and that's why I don't bet it. If this was if I had my own data on this, or if anyone else did a study and sent it to me, I would maybe be more interested in just always betting the UFC veteran, depending on the odds. But usually the UFC veteran would probably win this fight, I feel. It's too hard to get a gauge on debutants, but there are examples when debutants come in and they end up being really, really good, and they're top 10 level. So you never really know. There's tons of examples of some debutantes coming in and beating good fighters, but then there's also a lot of examples where they're not. And because we don't know, and there's so many examples to both extreme, stay away from the fight. Don't sweat it. Worry about a fight where there's actual data, like Eric Anders and Khalil Roundtree. We have a lot of fights on them and a lot of cage time to break down tape, so we get a more accurate picture of what those odds actually should be. But in this, you're just kind of going in blind. You really can't cap this fight because you don't know enough about what's his name? Costa. So, but I taped him, and he kind of just, like I said, it's really hard to tell what he does, or if he's any good. He just kind of wings a lot of punches, and he's super aggressive, and he's just overmatched every opponent that you can't get an accurate gauge of what his skill set is. So that's why I'm going to stay away. Brandon Davis is like minus 165. He should probably be the favorite just because the other man isn't proven. But I want to distinguish this type of debutant versus other debutantes. So Casey Kenny I played him last week, and he was actually proven. outside of the UFC because he's actually fought guys with legit records. He's been in LFA. He's fought on the Contender Series. He fought people who actually beat UFC competition as well, and he beat them. So he was more proven, and you had more data to go. You've seen him in 5-round fights, so I got to see his actual writing technique and wrestling ability in fights, where I don't know anything about this guy. So why you're kind of playing, it's kind of a crapshoot at that point. It's like you might as well go to the casino and just like play slots because you're kind of going in blind. Unless if you have some other type of information or anything, but I don't have enough to make a educated play on this. So Casey Kenny's a good example of debutants you can play because you actually have data on him and he's fought better competition outside of the UFC. But I also want to go over similar situations to this one where the debutant ended up losing. So a recent example, Mazo versus Moroz. I didn't play that fight for very similar reasons as to why I'm not playing this fight. Moroz was a kind of a fringe level UFC talent similar to Davis, and Mazo had kind of just been beating some. She was in a better organization than what Costa is currently in. She was in LFA, I believe, if I remember that correctly. But she's kind of just beat a bunch of girls who weren't that good, and she kind of just dominated them, and it was hard to actually know what her skill set is. And then when she went against somebody with a fighter who's actually full of skills, more skills than the other opponents, she ended up losing, and she didn't really have a game. So that's an example. Another one, and this is a funny one because Lipsky versus Calderwood, Lipsky actually looked good on tape. Like I actually thought she looked good, but because she was fighting bad competition, it was still hard to know how good she was. So I stayed away from that one as well. I hit Calderwood live after round 1 at like minus 170, so I ended up profiting on that fight. I stayed away pre-fight, but I hit Calderwood live. But again, Lipsky, even though she looked good on tape, it's hard to know, even if someone looks good on tape versus really bad competition. And like Lipsky and Costa, they're different than Kenny, because Kenny actually was pretty good outside of the UFC and fought legitimate competition. And then here's an example of a debutant that ended up winning, and we didn't really know how good he was going to be either. So this is just emphasizing the point that you don't want to just always bet the UFC veteran either. You might as well just stay away from a blind play. And the example I'm using, Edmund Shabazian, whenever he fought Stewart, Shabazian beat a bunch of 0-0, 1-2, 3-2 type of fighters outside of the UFC. Had one win on the Contender Series versus a guy who is decent but still not UFC level, and we didn't really know how good he was going to be. Then he fought Stewart, and he actually showed that he had a pretty good wrestling game in that fight. Ended up winning the fight in a very close fight, but it goes to show that you don't always know what's going to happen. The debutant might be like the Lipsky type or the Mazo type, or it might be the Shabazian type. We really don't know how to cap these odds. So after this fight, the Davis and Costa fight, we might come to find out that Davis should have been minus 500. We might end up coming out the other way and think that Costa should have been minus 500. So we really, really don't know. We're just going in blind, and that's why I think this is a stay away. And there's no point of wasting your energy on this. There's just not enough information. So I think just stay away and focus on the other fights for the event where there's actual data on fighters where you can make a more precise calculation on the fighter's chances to win. Thank you so much for listening to this. And if you have any questions, comment below. Follow me on Twitter. And just send me a message on Twitter too if you just have any other questions. Thank you so much. Bye.